Hi everyone, welcome to the Majlis. My name is Yasmin Khwatir, and with me today I have Dr. Hanoof Abokhodair. Hanoof, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Hanoof is an expert in an aspect of family businesses we don't often talk about, which is succession planning and governance. So Dr. Hanoof is a managing partner at Business Family House, where they help families navigate conflict and resolve succession and ensure modern governance. So, Dr. Hanoof, I would love to talk about what succession planning looks like. What are the typical methods and challenges we face when we think about that?
So, succession is a process, basically how we define it. It's a process of transitioning the business from one generation to the next, and it's a very long process. لأنه it has several areas to work on. لما نحن نقول succession, في ناس يحسبون succession is only picking up the next leader. So that is not what succession is. So we really like to talk about it in terms of generational transition. When we say generational transition, we mean transitioning the shares, the ownership, transitioning the leadership if the family needs to or wants or wishes to continue managing and leading the business. And there is also what we wrote in our paper, which we did for KPMG and the National Center for Family Businesses. There is the transition of the family values, the family, culture, and all these soft elements which are very important. For us, it's all should be part of the succession plan, if we want to say planning. Then there is really different directions in each of these buckets, if we want to call them. So if you look at, say, transitioning the ownership of the business, then there are different aspects that one has to consider. And same with transitioning the leadership, and same with transitioning the family factors, I would say. The challenge really relating to this whole journey, I would say, is starting the thought process and the difficult conversation. Because when we talk about succession or generational transitions, we're talking about the times when our maybe fathers and mothers are not going to be around. It's not easy. And while I say advisors often, it's just a general practice that we tackle these things as if we're with the families. I mean, as if we're talking about kind of like, how do you want to do the business strategy? It's not the same. This is an area filled with emotions. So I think managing the emotions of the process is really the challenging part. Some people say it's cultural, and maybe it's the culture of our part of the world. I think this is universal. It's not here that we feel more and in other places they feel less. So in my view, that is maybe the most difficult aspect of it, because all other things are technical details. Mm-hmm. What is very fundamental is how we approach this question with the families.
And what advice do you have there? Obviously, it is a very difficult topic to discuss because, like you said, you're talking about what happens when a dear family member is gone. So how do you navigate that?
It's never easy, even for us, we're all human beings. So it's really never easy to bring up this topic for discussion. But we try to just explain that, as family businesses, what differentiates family businesses? Family businesses are long-term oriented. They want to see the business survive for the next, 500 years. Mm-hmm. So if you want to take that as a valid, dream to pursue, then one must think how you want to get there, and maybe it's not easy, never easy, but we try to focus, or at least remind ourselves in these processes with the families that is your vision or what you want to achieve as a goal. So then let's think about it from that perspective. Think about your third and fourth and fifth generations. And how can we get the business thriving and running, and the family as well, to those generations,
No, makes sense.
That could be maybe a good way to start the conversation. But again, every family is different, by the way.
And I think that brings me to another topic, which is, all of these emotions and all of these very legitimate different pathways that could be explored. And obviously everyone has their own opinion on how it should go, lead to conflict, right? So how do you think about conflict resolution, keeping in mind perhaps heightened emotions, perhaps, multiple parties all wanting different things for the family?
And that is the essence in the fundamental structure of family businesses. You have a family, you have an ownership, and you have the business itself. And that is what we refer to as the 3 circles model. And then you have the people who are sitting in the overlapping areas between these 3 circles. And it's very natural then, if I am in this position and you are in that position, we have very different worldviews and we want very different things, and our goals and objectives are very, very different. And that is exactly what normalizes conflict in business families. So for us, the thought is really not to eliminate, because you cannot eliminate conflict. It will always be there. What we try to work with the families on addressing and achieving is learning how to address conflict constructively. Now, why does conflict become very destructive in several or maybe most cases? Because you get the emotional side or the emotions kind of covering up the conflict processes in a way. There are types of conflicts. We could conflict, or we can have different ideas. Conflict is diversity, by the way, if you want to look at it from a more positive angle. If we have different ideas about where the business should go, okay, that is what we call goal conflict. There is a conflict around how we see the best way to achieve that goal. That is what we call process conflict. And then these are fairly straightforward if we just understand that we are having different ideas about what we want to achieve. And, we can have a civil conversation about the pros and cons of each direction, and then we can weigh out which one is best for achieving our common or our what we want to achieve. Where it gets a bit complicated is with what we call the role conflict and the relationship conflict. The role conflict is where at home, around the dinner table, we are siblings or cousins or parent and child, and in the same maybe next day and the same week we go to the office, and then the nature of our relationship changes. But because these are kind of in our heads, right? It's very difficult for us to realize that we are switching context here, and then we have to switch how we relate to one another and how we interact and how. Now, where things happen or go wrong and lead to emotional or relationship conflict is where this switch doesn't happen. So I'm your cousin and we are sitting in the boardroom and we should operate as board members, but then I find that you are talking to me as your cousin in front of our employees. And maybe that doesn't really work well for me, Right. Maybe I get offended, or I feel that you're not respecting me in my new role, or this and that. And these feelings is what takes us this kind, and it's not only, they don't only come from role conflict, but that's one source of them. But then that takes us to relationship conflict. Relationship conflict is when we have these sorts of, I would say, then accumulated negative experiences and emotions, and then we are in conflict by nature of whatever situation we are, not because of what the situation that is happening, but because I really feel a grudge towards you, something like that. And that is very complicated. You know, there is a saying, one of the family business scholars said, family businesses never fight about what they say they are fighting about, because you will have this fight on the surface. They say maybe we are fighting about the business or the direction or this and that, but if there is a relationship conflict, it's underneath the dynamic, and we have to dig it out as, you know, family business advisors, and then put it on the table for the members to see what is it exactly that they are conflicting about. So it's the topic of conflict is, yes, متشعب, I would say, and يعني في spillover between the different types, and really requires a lot of يعني skill to address with the families.
And this reminds me a lot, actually, as you're speaking of the TV show Succession.
Exactly.
But that's an example of how things go horribly wrong, right? Because the other thing to me is perhaps, you know, maybe the reason they didn't seek out guidance or an advisor is it feels also intensely private sometimes, in a way that it shouldn't be, because it is a business, but the dynamics under are quite private. So coming in as an outsider to talk about something that they might feel is deeply personal and private, that must be difficult.
Yes and no. It is difficult, yes, but I'll tell you something which I often say to whoever when I'm explaining the topic of conflict. Me, myself, I know all the theory and, you know, the knowledge, and not all, but a good chunk of it, about how to deal and address conflict. But the minute I am in conflict, all this knowledge evaporates, because we're human beings. I cannot, if I have a stake in the thing that is happening, the conflict, I cannot, you know, just remove that hat and remind myself how to best address conflict. And that is where the third-party moderator is very important, and they can bring a lot of value, because they are, you know, independent. They don't have a stake in the conflict that is happening, or any benefit that could come out of a settlement or an agreement. And then they are not involved emotionally with whatever is happening. Then they can help the parties even open up and have the real conversation, because in conflict, and this is something we tell to the families, sometimes one good way to address conflict, when we say conflict resolution, is to recognize that we are in conflict and to go and request a meeting to discuss what you are conflicting about. But then more likely than not, without the help of a moderator that can, you know, help this process, it's very easy that you come to what we call the avoidance responses. Then maybe you approach me, Yasmin, saying, Hanoof, I think we are having this disagreement. I want to talk to you about it. And if I am high in avoidance, I would say, La, what are you talking about? No, we're good. You know, and then you will feel, okay, she's playing games. Yeah. So imagine this situation, but then you have a third party that is watching this. No, the third party would say, no, Hanoof, Yasmin has a valid reason to call for a meeting. Please sit in. And this is, you know, so they are, yes, the conflict is often about private matters, but if you want to really resolve it and you cannot have this conversation on your own, then bringing up or bringing in a third-party moderator could be actually very helpful. And it's just another thought about conflict, because that is, you know, the general idea we have about conflict is that conflict is always bad, and it's always troublesome. And
I loved what you said, that conflict is diversity.
Conflict is diversity, if you think about it. Now we have, back to the three circles, you have people who are sitting in different places and they have different ideas corresponding to where they are sitting in the family business system. This means diversity. And diversity, when managed well, actually leads to innovation. And you know, leads to ideas that none of us alone, from your own perspective, would have had, except that because we are in this situation of diversity, I was able to hear different perspectives. And maybe this leads us to some other path that we did not think about before individually. So, and that is where we help, or we try, طبعا, at least to explain that, look at it as diversity and learn ways, normalize conflict, for example. To start with, let's normalize that we will always have disagreements. This is life. حتى تربى يعني away from family businesses, even us in our lives, we will always encounter people who conflict with what we see or how we see things. So I think this developing the skill of dealing with conflicting ideas is fundamental for everyone. And I think it's one way, one preventive measure for family businesses is to train on dealing with conflicts and having those difficult conversations.
And perhaps to even have, methods that they've set aside beforehand on how to resolve conflict. And I think that brings me to my second question, which is, we're talking a lot about different methods of conflict resolution. One way is to bring in a third party. What are other ways that you suggest for clients to think about, talking through issues successfully?
That when we talk about conflict, we always look at it in two phases. There is the prevention phase, and there is the when it happens. And you can only do your best to prevent and put certain, mechanisms and agreements and processes in place, but there are no guarantees. So you always have to be ready for if one day it comes up, and most probably it will come. But with the mechanisms, with the prevention, we would say hopefully the intensity is less. The way we take it is maybe more grounded. So in terms of prevention, you have, as you said, to agree on how we want to address the situations before they arise. Because one simple reason, when we are discussing a hypothetical situation, there are no people in the situation that we are discussing. We are just discussing empty positions, if you want to visualize it. There is the three circles. We have the owners, we have the business leaders, we have the family members. Let's assume or imagine a situation that arises where a family member, comes to the owners and says something. If you wait, and then you can discuss and brainstorm ideas how we address the situation if it arises. If you wait until the situation arises, then there is Yasmin and there is Hanoof, and then it's personalized. Because whatever we are going to discuss and agree on, it's no longer about the positions, it's about Yasmin and Hanoof today. Imagine then we're talking about your sister and my cousin. And then sides start to form. I will take Yasmin's side, you will take Hanoof's side, And that is where we always say agree on things before the situations arise. And that is a great prevention mechanism, I would say.
This all seems to relate to the governance and having a good governance plan or model, right? So we always hear this. I mean, it's common sense. Oh, your family business should have good governance. But what does that tangibly mean?
It literally means, if you want me to describe a structure or a process for a good governance, it then would mean all sorts of processes and structures that we have in the world. Because as we always say, there is not a best practice. In our view, we are a believer of this school of thought. There is not a best practice in governance. And this is for the simple reason that no family is like another. Every family is very unique. So what we say, there is often a process that is best for a family, this particular family, not the one next door. So in that sense, really, I cannot describe a best practice governance. What I would say is important for any family when developing their governance is to build alignment. And to explain this point, I want to take you back to what is family business governance to start with. Because the corporate governance idea as we all know. It's built on the separation of ownership and management. And then you have the agency problem, if you're familiar with it. The agent, the CEO, has different interests than the owners who are sitting up there. And then they created the idea of creating the board of directors, and this whole governance movement was to kind of have this council board represent the owners and safeguard the business against the free riding behavior of potentially the CEO because of the Enron and other scandals that happened in the corporate world.
Could you describe that one to me? Actually, I'm not familiar with it.
So before corporate governance was invented, there was nothing. You had owners. They started to come to develop this listed companies model. Before that, it was mostly family businesses. They developed the listed company model, and the listed company model by default separates ownership from management, because then you are floated in the market. You have so many owners, and then you have the management only. That is pre-corporate governance era, I would say. And then what happened in several, and they became known as, very problematic and scandalous, that the managers then had their own interests served, which is not aligned with what the owners wanted to achieve. And then you would have cases of fraud, you would have cases of different things. That is basically having a couple or a few cases like that in the corporate environment drove the whole governance movement into the business community. So, and then we started getting these board of directors. The main idea initially, it was to have this board represent the interests of the owners, monitor, that is the function of the board, monitors the management, ensure that they are running the business in accordance with the interests of the owners. Right. And a second function is to provide advice to the management. What happened over time, in my analysis, by the way, this is my analysis, okay? عشان no one takes it as science. I'm not quoting science here. What happened over time is now we have this new form of organizations gaining attention, which is family businesses. And then with family businesses emerging, we naturally started to transfer the exact corporate governance thinking to the family business, thinking that these are best practices. And I'm not saying it's not good for family businesses, but then the function of governance in the family business is different for me. For one reason, you created that system because there is separation between management and control in the listed company. In family businesses, most cases, there is no separation between management and ownership. And then who are you creating the board to monitor? Because here it's another family member and his interests are actually maybe aligned with the family overall. So the function of family governance in our view in a family business is very different. I take you back to the 3 circles model. You have then owners with very different ideas and perspectives. And they all, because of the dominant ownership in the family business, it's a block holder. They have a big influence over the business through the dominant ownership they have as a family, one unit. But within this unit, you have people with very different ideas. So then the one of the main functions of the governance in the family business is first to align. I take you back to alignment. Aligning the ownership space. Because if you have owners who are pursuing different directions, then good luck sustaining the business, because they will be voting in very different directions. So that's one function, very different from the normal corporate governance. But then you still have a corporate governance in the family business. If you have a family manager and there is high trust, then you don't need the monitoring function of the board. Maybe you need the advice, you need the networking, you need the opening up of, opportunities. It's a different one. But if you have a low trust family, and then even if the family manager is a family member and he's still pursuing his own interests, then you would need the monitoring function of the board. But then you have the family unit. You govern, when we talk about governance of the family business, we govern the three circles and the interaction between the three circles. So if I govern the ownership, then let's say we built alignment around ownership matters. And the family kind of agreed on a direction, agreed on how to address the different, situations as they arise, agreed on this and that. And then, okay, you as owners are going to kind of elect the board. Then, there is the branch thinking in family businesses. So they might tend, and it's okay because every family is different, but you might then see that there are other criteria and factors that influence the decision to elect board members apart from qualifications only. Branch representation is one in the family business, because if I'm a branch owning with my other branches in the family business, I want to make sure that we have someone. Is this good or bad? There's no one answer, because sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It depends how you use it and the context and the family. Just to sum up, it's very different what we are talking about when we talk about governance of the family business and of corporate governance more generally. And in here, it's mostly about the ownership and how you align the different owners and you organize the relationship to the other entities, the business and the family.
Maybe can we give 2 examples of 2 different types of governance that you've seen in something that works for one family and something that works for a different type of family?
I just give you an example. If say a family is early in its stages of development, لسه الفounder موجود, the sons and daughters are relatively young, and maybe 1 or 2 of the sons are working with the father. There are not issues really, but we don't say because a lot of our work is prevention. So we don't say in this case don't think about the board or the governance. It's good to think early on, because in no time, in 10 years, 15 years, you will have a different situation where it's more leaning towards the siblings stage. Another family, if I give the other example, could already be in its 3rd generation, huge business as it evolved, complex structures on both sides, the family and the business. And then, yes, the governance of this entity would look very different. You would want to have a professional board. You would want to have, everything more formalized and structured, because خلاص with this size is better to have things more formal, I would say,
I see. And I think that's a nice transition to the next question of dealing with the next generation, right? Which is a hot topic now. You have, 3rd gen for most families here, I think 2nd gen elsewhere as well, coming up, and they're hungry. They want to be part of the company, but they also have a vision for what they see it becoming, which could at times be very different from what their father or grandfather thought. What do you see are, the challenges for the next gen rising now, and what do they want to do with the family business?
What we see really is that our next generations are, coming with many more ideas, I would say, about, bridging the current state of the business to the future as the business environment evolves, as, new opportunities arises, as globally, we are seeing so many changes and advancements in almost every direction. So the next generations often are the ones who are bringing these topics. And I'm not saying طبعا the current ones are not, but it's just generally speaking, we see it, introduced much more by the young generation. The challenge, I would say, is in communication. Because still we have a culture of respect, we have a culture of accepting the leadership of the family and the business, if it's our father, if it's our elder brother or uncle or whoever. So I don't know, that is my observation. We see them having difficulty coming and saying, listen to me, I have an idea. And we can really dive deep into this topic, but sometimes maybe they are saying it prematurely. You cannot come and say, I have an idea, if you don't build, you have not yet built your credibility. Why should I listen to you if you're coming to me with an idea just now as you finished off college? في several reasons why this becomes a challenge for the next gen, but overall I would say it comes with a great opportunity, because when they have the good ideas, they are closer to the changes that are happening. احنا كلنا as we grow older, maybe, I don't know, speaking maybe about myself, we get less and less understanding of what's of all the developments and the changes that are happening. They are much more close than us to these opportunities, and they are qualified. Many of our next gens are coming, with higher education from the best universities around the world, and many of them have had the chance to work abroad. And this is not something, by the way, you see in many countries. It's maybe one of the advantages we have. Our next gen base is wide, is full of energy, is they really want to be part of the change that is happening to the family businesses. I think they just need to go through the process, be patient, and yes, try to learn how to have the difficult conversations with respect to the older generation, with appreciation to their contribution and what they have built throughout the years.
And perhaps that starts to answer a little bit one of our last questions, which is, what are the role of values in all of this, succession planning, resolving conflict, governance?
Values are very important. It's one of these factors that I feel, that's my observation, is very important. We all talk about it, but not in enough depth, I would say, because it is a very deep concept, the values. The values basically is what operates in our, I would say, even subconscious minds as the rules of behavior, in a way. So if I have a value for, say, honesty, it's registered in my mind. So it will be triggered the minute I find myself in a situation where there is dishonesty, right? That is how they operate, the values. So I'm saying this because their effect on our behavior is very fundamental. And our values are the red lines. We don't cross them because we link them to our sense of self and understanding of how to navigate this world. It's no. Values are a no red line, okay? Now, this is the importance and how deep they are. But I don't feel they have enough attention when talking or organizing the family businesses, because if we miss out on capturing the actual values of a family, then whatever you write on your governance would not be implemented. Because if it is not aligned with the core values, then when the situation comes up for Yasmin, say you are the family member and your alarm system goes on because there is a red line you're approaching, or someone around you is approaching one of your red lines, you will, your reaction will be very strongly no. And there is no conversation about values. I will not discuss or argue about what I think is fundamentally right or wrong, right? These are one of the things, and that is the danger. While they are very powerful, the danger is that we cannot debate values. It's just a belief. I believe this is right or this is wrong. It's done. You cannot convince me, otherwise. So, in terms of importance, fully established. And what makes them, what's their effect? When we are aligned in our values as family members, it becomes extremely powerful force of unity, of productivity, of we work very well together because we just have kind of the same operating system. If our values align. The danger also comes when, and it's likely because as the family base grows, you have, more members with more ideas, maybe more diverse backgrounds, and some might have grown up in one place, some might have been raised in another place, and these are all things that shape our values. So as the group enlarges, the diversity kicks in. We might have people with very diverse value profiles. And when that is the case, it moves from becoming a strong, powerful force of unity and, harmony and this and that into a strong factor of division. And it's a complex problem to address because it's not something we can resolve as we resolve a business problem. Right. These are the pros, these are the cons, this is your best path forward. No, with values, خلاص, this is my belief. لا غلط صح, I cannot really, you can't really say much about it. So it's very deep, it's very important. It has to be, I think if I am to give one idea about values, is this because it's something that operates in our minds kind of subconsciously. So it's very helpful as the family progresses in their journey to dig out first our core values, really what are the core values, and not what we want to put on paper as nice concepts. What are really our red lines, or alternatively what we feel very strongly should be done, like giving back to the community, contributing, and write them down. So that when the group of people expands, everyone understands that the value of this family is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it's values charter. Yes, you need to kind of even structure the transition of values. As I started the conversation on succession, for us this is one of the elements that you over time, not initially, because initially values move very organically from parents to children. Right. But then when the base of the parents and the children becomes more diverse, and the branches rise in the family, and you have maybe even the geographical diversity, then it's very important to formalize the process of the transition of values. And this happens through governance structures, when I spoke about the governance of the family.
That's amazing. Thank you. And I think what's really enlightening in this conversation is, yes, a lot of this is for family businesses that have a lot of profit at stake, but so much of what you're saying could hold for interpersonal conflict or within families as well, just on the regular. So it's really, in a way, almost like a therapist for these types of businesses. I don't know if you get that a lot.
Definitely. I think as we speak today, very few voices are calling for psychologically trained family business advisors. But as I operate on the ground and as I, interact with the families, I really feel it's a fundamental aspect, yes, to answer your questions. With the families, you have a family overlapping with the business. And then with the family, what is a family? Family is emotions, it's relationships, it's psychology, is my father always preferred you over me. كلنا we have siblings, right? Yeah. It's family is family. So imagine the situation when you bring this dynamic and it overlaps with the business dynamic, which has a very different logic. That is really what we find a lot, and we read in research about family business. They speak about logics. There is a family logic, there is a business logic, and they are operating in very different directions. The family is about care and love and support and, recognition and inclusion and this and that. And the siblings or family members, at least in the second generation, they want equality. They want, to see the same level of involvement from the parents. They want approval. That is family. Again, I say overlap. Take this and install it in a business environment. The business is based on meritocracy. There is no such thing as equality. You are if you are doing a better job, then you will be rewarded. It clashes directly with the logic and the family, where we are all equal and we expect to be treated very equally, right? And that is what complicates it, and that is where emotions, in some cases positive, some cases not very positive, arise. And yes, it complicates the whole, situations. And with that, I am not convinced that our mere business training with our MBAs or, business, whatever qualifications that we have, is sufficient to address this, segment of businesses, because there is a family on top of the business. And with that, there are so many other factors that are not mere, a business equation.
Right. As much as the family would even want to, act as if it's totally separate, those lines are always going to be blurred. I mean, a son and a father in a boardroom, it's hard to completely disengage.
Yeah. And that is the least. Imagine if we own and we are in the boardroom and we are in the management level and we have our sons and daughters are also employees. Very entangled. And then, managing. When we work with the clients, we always talk about the hats, because it's very critical that you understand that at this moment you are, around the dinner table, and the next moment you might be around the board room table. The next, maybe you are, on a family trip, and you really need to adjust your logic, your behavior, as you move between the different situations and contexts. Otherwise, you will have what we call, and I explained earlier, role conflict. Sometimes the three circles does not even create, speaking about the logics, if I am an owner, I have the ownership logic, and at the same time I'm leading the business. I am also wearing the business logic, and I am maybe the head of the family, the father, say. I also have the family logic, and I am sometimes presented with a situation where I have to pick one. And maybe my sons and daughters sitting around me and asking me to join the business, so I have to respond as a father with care and equality, but I have also to think about the business and what's good for the business, and I have to think about the family and the impact of whatever direction I take. I have to think about, and there will, whatever I choose, it will be on the expense of the other hats.
Yeah.
And that will create an impact. So why I'm saying this, it's because to understand that the people with the different hats are not only conflicted with the other, I'm conflicted within me. You see, because it's difficult for me. I want to see what's good for my children. I want to be equal and fair to them. But if I do that, I will be doing something most probably harmful to the business. But so it's never easy. Sadly, it's the reality of a business, a family in business. And it's these skills that we try to help them understand and develop, because it's crucial for their survival. Right. If I don't see the boundary of this context, and if I don't shift my logics and this and that, it's very difficult. And for the conflicted ones within themselves, yes, it's a very difficult emotional work, honestly speaking. And if I bring in the topic of emotions into the conversation, it's very tough, because I know that whatever choice I make, it will trigger some unwanted reaction on any of the other, fronts. And then I will have to sit with the emotions, whether they are guilt, but whatever I choose will sadly create a negative, emotion about the other parts of the dynamic.
It is a bit inevitable, but as you were saying, the right formalized succession planning and governance is how you mitigate as much as possible negative emotion,
and be ready. It will always these decisions will always come across and need to be taken with understanding. And this is something we try to do a lot when we explain, because if, say, you don't know about these 3 circles models that I just explained, and you are Yasmin, and then you're sitting with your father, and maybe your sister is around, or your brother, and you both want to go into the business, and he rejects you both, and you don't understand any of what I explained, you will feel rejected and you will feel frustrated, both of you. And you will not understand why, because you're now operating according to the family logic. You will not understand why is our father so, cruel and unsupportive to us, and this and that, and maybe I can't find a job outside of the family business. And when you understand that this is what it is, and it's not your father alone, it's anyone in that position, it becomes less personalized. And when we understand that it is not about us, it's not about them, it's just the situation, whoever is in these different positions, then we might be able to tackle it with less, negative emotions, more tolerance, and more maturity. Khalas, it is what it is,
Yeah, I think the lesson I'm learning here today is not to avoid conflict, but to, as even though it is harder to do it this way, to try to handle it with, either with third party help or with truly an open mind when you're going into it.
Yeah. And absolutely, even, this approach for me is very powerful, even with emotions. If you depersonalize emotions, Yasmin, let's take an example. You say something that makes me feel unappreciated. If I don't depersonalize this emotion in how I now address it and communicate it with you, and how I make sense of me feeling it in the first place, what will happen? What will happen is that it's gonna start boiling. And maybe you do something else after 2 weeks, and then it starts accumulating because I'm still processing the previous one. And then you do something else, and then, maybe I watch my mom come and do something that makes me feel that she is actually favoring you over me. And then I have a third now instance, and they start accumulating. What happens over time? Definitely I will explode, and then we will have kind of a fireworks around the situation. Why I say let's depersonalize it? Because if I understand that it's absolutely normal for me to feel what I'm feeling when I perceive something in this manner, so then it's not me, it's not you, it's just the situation, and it's normal. And if we change any, if we put any individuals in the same situation, we will have similar reaction. Then it's not personal. Then I should feel okay saying, Yasmin, by the way, what you said the other day made me feel unappreciated. Not you, as what we say. Don't point finger. Don't come and say, yes, me and No, describe the action, not the person. Send what we say, I messages. Start with yourself, what you feel about something, not point finger to the other person that you are this or that. If you depersonalize it, and if we train ourselves to have these conversations, then it's no problem at all, It's okay. I felt wronged by something you said or did, and it didn't feel right, and you should accept it with an open heart and maybe explain, and most often it will turn out to be a misunderstanding. You did not mean to to wrong me, right? And I think the same approach of depersonalizing, diffusing and talking about it, whatever it is. If it is your interest versus my interest, if it is my accumulated emotions from things you are saying or doing, if it is whatever it is, if we just name it, put it on the table, admit that it is a very natural human something that is happening, and then we can deal with it with some maturity. And it's not personal anymore. And it's the minute it stops being personal, it's turns into kind of a business problem in a way.
100%. Well, thank you so much. That a lot of learning there, I think, not just for family businesses, but for us as individuals. So I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed as well. Thank you, Yasmin.